This is storytelling music, by the way. Hello everyone, and welcome back to a regular weekly Death Diary. If you don't count the April Fool run last week, I know you're all super excited to hear what we have been up to since the Battle of Barbarossa. The answers to that are going to take a few Death Diaries to cover, so I figured I will start with a timeline for you. We recently released 1.10.4 to fix various multiplayer exploits going on. See that, man? The HOI4 International is changing the meta, I'm telling you. I know for a fact that Paradox employees have watched the International in like a group viewing, but seems an important case was not detected at the time, so we are working on 1.10.5 to address that soon. ParadoxCon is coming up in May, so expect to hear some more details there. Yearly anniversary is coming in June, so expect some cool stuff and patches. We are, however, spending most of our time on 1.11, Barbarossa update, as well as the unannounced expansion that will be released together with it. That's what we will spend most of our diaries as well as today. And the unannounced DLC will focus on the Eastern Front and the core of Hearts of Iron, which is warfare. Particularly land warfare. Historically, the Eastern Front was without doubt the most important front of World War II. It was the largest confrontation in history, and is where Hitler's expansion was first stopped and pushed back, signaling the eventual doom of the Axis powers. There are several areas we want to improve here. Weather does not feel impactful enough. Oh, I like that. While historically it had massive impact. Logistics currently doesn't have much player interaction and is mostly something you have to deal with only when problems appear. And finally, the combat and division meta has been stable, with an emphasis on large divisions for a long time. Something we hope we can shake up. Oh, that sounds very good for multiplayer, man. Today, I will give you guys a bit of an overview on the supply aspect, but fair warning, it's early days and stuff may still change here before we're done. I'll probably spend 3+ diaries on supply over the course of development to cover everything, but I figured it would be nice to hear about the overarching ideas. The old system worked by having discrete supply areas pathing back to the player's capital and keeping track of the bottlenecks. To simplify a bit, those bottlenecks then decided how many units could fit into areas near the front without penalties. The areas themselves were unintuitive to players and required you to check multiple map modes to see if you stepped over an edge, etc. I do like the bottleneck system though, because feedback is usually immediate, but it suffered from not having much scaling cost as distance is increased, so it was hard to use it to limit snowballing. As I mentioned, it was also a system you didn't care too much about until you had a problem. Very true. While historically logistics was a vital part of planning a campaign. This led to combining the issue with another gripe of ours, that the way fronts moved in World War II often followed important railroads, but doesn't really in HOI4. We came to the conclusion that we should try and make a system focused on railways, and with a truck-based component as a way to get more out of it when away from the rails. You have to build a railway now? That's interesting. So we see a railway here. In our new system, supply flows from the capital, aka the total amount available depends on your total industrial base, through railways, where the level of the railway acts as a bottleneck. To transport more, you need a higher level of railway. Seems like you have to not only build infrastructure now, but also railway. Railways are the current bottlenecks in a way. That means like the Africa war will be a railway from Tobruk to the east. That sounds really cool, man. And maybe you can bomb the railways and really fuck your enemy. Makes sense, right? Depending on how much supply is transported, you need a certain amount of trains for the rails to perform. Trains are a new equipment type that we will dig it. Oh, it's a new equipment type. That's cool. I already feel a bit weird because I feel like in multiplayer people will just bomb your railways all the time. If you have green air on your enemy and you just bomb his railways, well, fuck him, right? An important part of railways is that they are capturable. So as you push into enemy territory, you will want to make sure to hold vital railways and capture railway hubs to supply your troops. There's a conversion time here to model the fact that there was usually some repair and regauging that needed to happen for attackers. Let's take like, for example, France. I like this. This is cool. I don't know how it's gonna work in the end, but that's cool, man. So also had a huge impact on the Eastern Front for transport and supply, so they will work essentially like basic railroads now, where you need to control both sides of their banks to use them to ship supplies around. If I control both sides of a river, I can ship supplies in that river. Okay. Supply is drawn from what we call supply hubs now, which we see here. This might be supply hubs, huh? which are either cities, naval bases, or manually constructed stations along the... Oh, you can construct them, which have to be linked into the network. Air supply... I have to link something? The air supply works a bit differently, but we will talk about it in the future. The flow of supply from a hub to a division depends on the terrain and weather. I like the weather thing. I like that weather makes more sense now. Who the fuck ever cared about weather on HOI4, right? Oh, it's raining, I shouldn't use my bombers. Who the fuck does that? Some wereaboo maybe in his fucking basement. And ideally you want to have available trucks here, which is to say motorized equipment. To increase the amount of supply to get as well as range. Cost of trucks and trains and losses to attrition and bad weather will be a limiting factor on your logistics. Overall, this creates a system where it's strategically sound to fight over railways, prepare for larger offensives, to try and bleed each other's logistics capability, and to force care when advancing in bad terrain and weather. The results is much more fun, historically, and more immersive, especially on the Eastern Front. Sounds good. Sounds good, I guess. Good dev diary, I'm excited. I'm actually, this is gonna sound weird, I'm gonna regret that, and people already clipped it. I'm kinda excited for more achievements. I kinda miss single player a bit, because single player has this roleplay thing to it, like naming divisions and creating a story. Poland focus tree rework. First of all, cool for single player, cool for achievement runs. Second, very, very, very bad for multiplayer, because it does not matter a second what you do to Poland in multiplayer. In multiplayer, Poland isn't played, it just dies. So that's bad for our community. Let's take a look. Hello everybody and welcome to another dev diary for the upcoming Barbarossa patch and yet to be announced DLC. Today I'm going to be talking about the first focus tree, which is a rework of Poland. Poland was first added as a free DLC on release for everyone, titled United and Ready. So as such, what you see in this diary will be free for everyone once Barbarossa drops. The next diary will continue to cover the DLC parts of the focus tree, because the tree is a bit too large to cover in one go. Enjoy. Poland is interesting because it's hugely popular minor. It's roughly as popular as Spain and more popular than Greece. Wow. A lot of people play that in single player, huh? Yet it has a very difficult position sandwiched between the Soviets and Germany, which tends to scare people off. Perhaps it's a challenge, or its critical role in World War II, or just the large amount of Polish HOI4 friends, you tell me. We see some funny shit here. Why is there a beach? Cool little focus tree, I guess. Also a new portrait for Mujici. Let's start with the industrial branch. In the old tree, the player would have to dredge through a lot of low-value research bonuses to get just a few extra factories. So many of the old focuses have been expanded with extra factories and bonuses. This is gonna have impact in multiplayer because it looks like Poland is gonna have more factories and thus boosts Germany a bit more. Many industry focuses for Poland grant powerful temporary stuff. Minus 15 consumer goods for 720 days. Jeez. I'm not reading everything because in the end this is all just about achievement runs for my channel. Poland was a nation with many problems in 1946, and one such problem was their rail networks were disparate and disconnected, largely due to the fact that Poland had only a few decades prior been part of the three different nations. Among many problems this caused for Poland, it also distributed their agricultural supply networks, which resulted in the peasant strike of 1947. Effects, if not completed within 1 year. Peasant strikes. Replace the looming peasant strike with the peasant strike, which kind of destroys you. You have to take care of that. Otherwise the peasants fuck you. Beginning as mere whispers among the peasantry, if Poland fails to join the supply networks and enact major agricultural reform, they will be faced with a nasty peasant strike, damaging this. They pretty much lost if that happens. The fuck is that? The Polish Peasant Union? Failing to enact the reform entirely resulted in a massive populist uprising and a civil war. Again, we're not going to see that a lot. Maybe just for an achievement run. In multiplayer, you're not going to see that. Moving on to another issue Poland had in the 30s, we have the free city of Danzig. Danzig Gdansk was in a unique and complicated position in this period. The city was simultaneously free and owned by no one, an official Polish protectorate, and an international city partially run by the League of Nations. So, representing Danzig Gdansk as an on-map tag in 1936 felt not quite right. So instead, the city is demilitarized and Poland is incapable of accessing it. When the Nazi party took over the city, it strangled Polish trade. So Poland begins the game with the embargoed economy trade law. 5 consumer goods, you have no intelligence at all, you can't do any spies, and you lose a bunch of resources. Similar to undisturbed isolation in the US. Ramp down on Danzig, develop a new fort. Attempting to seize control of Danzig will cause the city to begin a resistance, and Poland can fight that resistance through decisions and the usual resistance compliance mechanics. With enough compliance, Poland will be able to ban the Nazi party and take permanent control of the city, ending the resistance. Isn't that gonna really make Germany mad though? Failing to bring Danzig under control will result in the city rising up against you and appearing as attack on the map. There's gotta be an achievement as Danzig own all of Poland or something, 100%. When either Gdynia or Danzig has become Poland's major port, they gain access to the rest of the naval branch, granting dockyards, factories, and research bonuses. So you have to figure out the Danzig problem to access that focus stream. Next up, we have the old prepare for the next war branch, which has been expanded quite considerably since its original implementation. Poland now has access to Plan East and Plan West military plans to fight Russia and the Reich. I mean, this is exciting for single player. It excites me. Historically, Poland believed the USSR to be the greater threat and didn't begin preparing Plan West until just 2 years before the invasion. But with the power of hindsight, the player can start either plan immediately after completing the prepare for the next war focus and accumulate forts and other stuff to fight. However, until Plan West has been completed, Plan East cannot begun and vice versa. We have to choose which one to do. As Danzig on all courts of Germany and Poland. Yeah, something like that. Danzig together. Dude, you're clever. Danzig own all cores of Poland and Germany. That's genius. Finally, probably the part of the three that has received the most love, the historical Polish political focus branch. Poland was not the United Stable regime we had previously seen on release. Along with impending threats outside the borders, Poland was plagued with infighting and factions. The dictatorship was divided between Castle, led by Ignacy Mujicki, and the Senatation right, led by Edward Rydzich, and the Senatation left by Valery Slavek. And then you figure out who needs to win, blah blah blah. Cool shit, aligned with the West. Commonwealth stuff. Cool. Revanchism. Yeah, I get it, man. I'm excited for the single player achievement. Just my final opinion. I'm excited for the single player and getting an achievement there, but for multiplayer, it doesn't mean anything. I think I'm not that interested in this week's Death Diary because it's the side tree of Poland. It's probably interesting to me for an achievement, but for multiplayer, it means nothing, right? Hello, folks, and welcome back to the Poland Death Diary Extravaganza. What does extravaganza mean? This week, I'm going to continue covering the changes coming to Poland. Focus 3, we have that is a big focus tree, man. Jeez. He still has to do these things here. That's a big Walter, wow. I mean, Dan Lind, that's what we need, but not on Poland. We need that on Italy and Russia, my dude. So I'm going to start here with something a bunch of you predicted last week. You can indeed play as the Peasant Strike. A Poland with ambitions to restore democracy and embrace the communist revolution must first build an organized peasant militia. That is probably going to be achievement stuff, so I shall read this. Organize the Peasant Strike. Remove low sanitation left opposition. When the Peasant Strike Civil War happens, you will take control of the Peasant Republic. Unlocks organize the Peasant Strike. No matter how many or few states join you in the strike, the rebellious state will be in a delicate balancing act between Democrats and Socialists. Your first step forward towards revolution is to sway the Front Morges to take up the peasants' cause. The Morges being an alliance of political parties supported by a select few Polish generals, including Sikorski. Each focus you do in this initial block will add 5 support to either communism or democracy, with a total of 50% or more being needed for one to assert dominance over the other. Similar to the Spanish Civil War, the Peasant Strike will be on a tight schedule, taking up to a year before the revolution happens. Poland will at first be able to add agricultural states to the strike, but by expanding the strike to factory workers, Poland will also be able to bring states from Poland's industrial heartland into the revolution. And then you have the sympathizer generals. Like if you play the peasant, you have to take a peasant general. Along with contesting for popular support, gaining military support will be vital for the movement. Using decisions, certain field marshals and generals will be swayed to your cause and gain. Poland will begin with socialist politician Stanislav Mikshol as a country leader. But those who wish to see the return of Vincenti Vitos, I mean, who doesn't? Shout out to Vincenti, will be able to bring him back via a leadership event. Okay. Once the Civil War is won, Poland will be in a vulnerable state. Isn't it always? Through operating manpower and resources after Civil War will place Poland in a precarious position. So some connections and outreach for foreign assistance may be needed. I hope there's not an achievement where you have to kill Russia and Germany. Because then you have to be gamey. You have to join Germany first, and then you kill Russia, and then you leave Germany and help him kill the UK and USA, but then you leave, and then you rush him to Berlin. Oh, you know, that's... I already feel that, man. Communist Poland will have 2 options. They may be bold and elect an anti-Stalinist candidate as chairman, or they may elect the Soviet-aligned Vladislav Gomulka. However, aligning with the Soviets will come at a cost of ceding eastern Poland. What? With democracy, Poland will Imagine going democratic Poland. May take advantage of the Front Mor's ambitions for close relations with France. Both Democrats and anti-Soviet communists will also be able to declare the destruction by officially recognizing the Maritime Colonial League. Poland can purchase Madagascar, Palestine, and more. What? If any of your purchases are successful, Poland will have somewhere to build their forces in exile. Oh, you know what that means? I hereby predict an achievement. Yes, Poland. After the fall of Poland, reconquer Poland. Something like that. Like you're Madagascar or Palestine, and then you have to reconquer. 100%. I know exactly how they do their achievements. 100%. No matter which option you pick, either conquering or building alliances with the Baltic states will allow you to create a new kind of Commonwealth, the Commonwealth of Socialist Republics. Moving on to the next branch, we have the Regency Council. Poland's attempt to restore the monarchy. The act of the 5th of November was the promises. It's going to be like 2 achievements, right? Every DLC, a nation has like 2 achievements, 3, 4, something like that. Regency Council. Poland will be able to choose a claimant, blah, blah, blah. What the fuck? Kingdom of Poland, Romania. What? Poland and Romania enjoyed close relations at the start of HOI's timeframe, and with the throne of Poland empty, Poland may throw herself into the complex mess of Romanian politics by electing a Romanian king. Oh, who's that guy? Pavel Bermont Avalov. Finally, we have the most unlikely candidate for the throne, Pavel Bermont Avalov. A warlord, a Cossack, a Georgian prince. Pavel led an interesting life of conquest and warfare. In the interwar period, Pavel and his Bermontian host invaded Lithuania and Latvia for reasons historians are still unsure of, but his ambition for Baltic dominance makes him the ideal candidate for militarizing the Polish state. I like this guy, I want to play him. Post-war Poland. With either Pavel, blah blah blah, Poland will be presented with a ladder of focuses enabling him to gain powerful shit to 15% core defense. Look at this guy, wow. Jesus Christ. You see that? There's a lot of stuff with being exiled. There's gonna be 100% an achievement where you have to be exiled and then save yourself. In exile, the Polish government went through a number of prime ministers and presidents before landing on something the Allies were satisfied with. If Poland is following a historical route and is exiled in another nation like Britain or France, they will demand the resignation of the sanitation leaders. Owners of Lacus tongues will gain access to a slew of agency bonuses. Oh, cool, man. Warsaw Uprising. You probably have to stage Warsaw Uprising and beat the Germans. The old psychometer and bomb focuses have been moved into the espionage branch. Yeah, cool. I'm not so interested because it's not really competitive multiplayer, which no one's fault. Okay, I heard they have a death diary. I heard we have a very big death diary, gentlemen. Hello, and welcome to another death diary about content coming in the 1.11 Barbarossa patch. And it's accompanying DLC. As always, keep in mind that the things shown in this death diary are still in development. Ever since we revealed the ship designer and man the guns, people have been asking about a similar system for tanks. We did, however, want to improve a bit on the ship designer. In particular, we felt that the ship designer was encouraging too many generalist designs. Part of the problem is that ships have a very long lag time before they become available, so it is difficult to iterate on the designs in a timely fashion. When your ship takes 2 years to build, you can't really specialize it too much, because you can't always do it. I always said that. Thankfully, tanks require a somewhat smaller investment, although our Q&A certainly has tried to make designs that rival ships in cost. So you need a new tank design and the front lines much sooner than a new ship, allowing you to react to new situations much faster. Another thing is that ships usually had trade-offs between different capabilities, in the sense that the space or module slot taken up by a torpedo launcher could also be taken up by an AA gun, making the ships better against one or the other type of enemy. But rarely did you want a ship that had no AA or no way to defend itself against surface targets, so you always wanted some AA and some ship attack. Tanks, on the other hand, don't usually trade offs in the same way. You don't usually design a tank wondering if you should put on another AA gun or second gun against surface targets, unless of course you're a German and it's 1944. But tanks still have trade-offs in their design, and we wanted to represent those. Traditionally, tank designs revolves around 3 aspects: mobility, firepower, and protection. A well-armored tank is slow, a fast tank can't carry a big gun, and a big gun requires a large tank, which is difficult to armor. During the war, different nations tried different approaches and learned different lessons from their observations. It is no surprise that the last German tanks of the war were heavily armored vehicles carrying massive guns, but the first post-war design was the comparatively light armored but well-armed and quite nimble Leopard 1. So we wanted to make you think about these 3 aspects and have it be a trade-off between them. However, in a grand strategy game, other aspects also matter than in the typical comparison of tank designs. The best tank in the world is useless if it breaks down on the way to the battlefield. Panther fans, take a note. and it is even more useless if you can't afford it. So we wanted cost and reliability to also matter. Very important. Cost is so important to not make this unbalanced. I already can see Dankus making a heavy tank that has 0 movement speed, but he just entrenches himself in the Russian lines and you can never break it. If you make a broken tank, you should at least pay the cost for it. It's something we asked for a long time in heavy tanks in HOI4, and at the moment right now you see we're using a heavy tank nerf mod because that is a big problem. In contrast to ships, we wanted to make you think more about specializing your designs to fill a certain niche. Tank designs like this is gonna make miners much more fun because a miner can make very different designs, man, that are for certain niches, yeah, and optimize it towards a specific role. While you will probably still want to have a somewhat middle of the road design for your main production medium tank, one might call it the Sherman, there's a place for more specialized designs as well. As part of this approach, we will be making changes to the reliability system and the armor system. The details will be forthcoming in the future dev diary together with other combat changes, but the broad strokes are that reliability will not just affect the rate of attrition, and that the armor system will become less binary. As part of these changes, we also decided to give mechanized equipment some upgrades so that it can keep up with tanks. Under the new system, reliability is meant to represent both the likelihood that a given piece of equipment breaks down, as well as the likelihood that it suffers catastrophic damage when hit, and the effort necessary to repair it. In effect, reliability also represents the carrying capacity of a given chassis. So you effectively have a reliability budget for every chassis to work with. That's sick, man. I love this. The more armor you put on it, the bigger the weapon, etc., the more reliability goes down. Heavier and more advanced tanks generally have more reliability. Over 100% of the base chassis in some cases. That is very cool. I think that's really sick. Enough of the basics. Let's talk about what you really want to know. What's the Kampfwagenkanone 42 in game terms? In the weird hybrid electric drive of the Elephant is the weird hybrid electric drive of the Elephant represented? Do we get to set the exact angle of the front armor or just the thickness? Much like ships, tanks are based on a hull called the chassis, and the number of modules that define the actual stats of the final design. These modules act as little different from the way the ship designer works. While the main armament is fairly self-evident, other modules representing something like the design features. These features are meant to be distinct enough that even someone who does not have an in-depth understanding of armor development during the war can at least understand the different armor types that are good for things. It's like ships. You have the basic chassis, the basic one, like basic, and then you make a different version of them. Like this is the base tank, and this is his first different design or something. I like here, it's just the tank and then you put the turret on. That's what I wanted to see. You need a lot of arm XP. Oh, that picture right here. This picture right here. I said it 2 years ago. I said we're gonna get this. Instead of scripting in a gigantic list of armor types of different thickness, armor is represented by thickness and a production method. There's riveted armor, it's the cheapest, but also the weakest. Cast armor is the strongest, but the most expensive. Welded armor is a compromise between the two extremes, making it the most cost efficient. Armor thickness is changed through something much like the old vanilla upgrade system, with up to 20 different levels. You start with being able to put up to level 5 levels of armor, equivalent to 50 millimeters of armor on a tank, but research allows you to put more on it. I think this is going to be great for also miners. Higher level of armor protection require more resources, such as steel and eventually even chromium. There's no limit to the amount of armor you can put on a chassis as such. If you want to make a light tank with the armor protection of a Tiger, you can do that. It's called Panzer 1 Ausführung F. The amount of armor upgrades on the vehicle translate to an actual armor value based on the types of armor you use, so blah blah blah. So 5 levels of riveted armor are still weaker than 5 levels of cast armor. This DLC might make this completely useless. Anti-tank. If people just spam armor, like this entire tree here, which already is useless, right? This is already trash in vanilla. It's gonna be even more useless. This is the barrel, the turret, the radio, the armor, the engine, or the suspension, the engine. Oh man. Yeah, bro. Oh, man. That is a death diarrhea. Wow. Engine times are also meant to be simple to understand. Gasoline engines are faster than diesel for the same weight, but diesels are more reliable. Beyond that, electric hybrid engines are very situational pick. We originally intended for them to be a joke pick, costly, unreliable, fuel efficient. But on some further reading, the rationale behind them was that they offered better mobility in broken terrain. In-game, this is represented by a small bonus to breakthrough and defense. Finally, there are gas turbines. There's 4 different engines? Dan Lind, I told you, man. Dan Lind learned so much from me. He's becoming a fucking alpha. Big problem I see with this, just like with ships, the competitive esports community will always make the same template, right? It's gonna be cool to find out though what it is, making the meta, finding out what the good template is. I will love the first weeks where everybody's just guessing, oh, what should I design? But after a while, people will know what to build, which is okay, man, it happens. Finally, there are gas turbines, which are unlocked from jet engine research. They are the fastest engine in the game, but take a lot of fuel. Like armor, engines also have an upgrade system where you can set the levels. Oh, I love this, man. It should be noted that the speed of most historical designs is going to be lower than the stated max speed in the vehicle that are based on. This is because we represent the operational speed of vehicle, i.e. how far the vehicle can get in 24 hours. Tanks don't drive around all day of maximum speed. They have to stop for refueling, resting. I love that. Turrets are split between different kinds and are meant to be representing things like crew ergonomics. Early in the war, a lot of countries had tanks with 1 or 2-man turrets. And one advantage Germans had was having a commander who could direct the rest of the crew without also having to service the main gun. This is represented by bonuses to breakthrough with different turrets. A special type is the fixed superstructure. Main guns are differentiated by size, small, medium, large, and super heavy. Light tanks can only carry small weapons, etc. Yeah, a light tank can have a big thing. Unless they have fixed superstructures, which enables them to carry guns 1 size bigger. Allowing you to mount a medium gun on a light tank. It sounds like a lot of research though. Seems like miners, like look at Mexico, you have 2 research slots at the beginning. You have to really be careful with your research and what you do with it, huh? Suspension affects mainly reliability and speed. The most basic kind is the bogie suspension, which adds some reliability, while Christie suspension adds quite a lot of speed. Torsion bar suspension adds more reliability and bogies, but it's more expensive. I love how he tries to balance shit. If you want a bigger tank, you have to pay more. I love that. Something like in vanilla, you have so much resources, man. You never go broke, and you can build whatever you want. Level 10 engine. What the fuck? Modular suspension. Installed modular Christie suspension. Developed by an American inventor, this suspension allows to exceptionally high speed. Max speed 2. That's very low. Plus 20%. The main weapon has probably the biggest impact on the offensive stats of the vehicle. There are a lot of different options to choose from, but we have tried to give every weapon type its own niche, with realistic drawbacks and advantages. So for example, the high velocity tank gun, like the K42 or the American 76mm, have worse soft attack but very good piercing and hard attack, while howitzers have very poor hard attack but good soft attack. This means that, for example, the early German tanks do struggle a bit against the French, which have pretty heavy armor. Wow. That is all the turrets. I love that. I love that. You know why? That means when you play the game, you have to... I always said I love when people have to make decisions in research and in the focus tree. You can't just do whatever you want in the focus tree. You can't just research what you want. You have to make a decision, and that looks like decision making. I'm a miner. I'm Canada, Bulgaria, Romania, Australia. I'm a miner. Oh man, do I invest into a big AA gun? Do I invest in heavy cannon 3, but then I can't have small cannon 2? I love that. That's really cool. As you can see, we made an effort to not have a giant tech tree this time. Oh. Looks like amphibious is easier to get. But you get amphibious drive. There's no amphibious tank anymore. That could be huge. There's no amphibious tank 2 anymore. It seems like you make a chassis, whatever, and then put an amphibious drive on it. And then you have a... Can I make an amphibious heavy tank 2? Like I make a heavy tank, and then I put this shit in his ass? And then I have a floating heavy tank? Finally, every chassis has 4 slots for specialized modules. So it will happen, like this gives me the base ground, the base of a heavy tank, and then I go into the designer. Then I like choose the engine, I choose the turret, I choose the armor and the suspension. That's the 4 base things you have to do. You have to do them. And then there's 4 extra slots, which we talk about now. I love that. 4 extras. Let me predict the extras without looking. Radio, maybe AA artillery, maybe radar. These can include radios, which gives bonuses to break from defense. Secondary turrets for all your T-35 needs. Oh, smoke launchers, extra ammunition, wet ammo storage. Deciding whether or not the tank uses sloped armor also happens in this area. Perhaps most intriguing is the amphibious drive, which allows you to design a design of an amphibious tank for the purpose of amphibious tank battalions. MDG owners only. Make shark tanks? A king shark! Oh yeah! Dude, imagine playing online, man, and you're a miner and you make like a king shark, bro. Or like a megalo Megalodon. The heavy tank 2 amphibious tank with a heavy turret, Megalodon tank, who's designed to land on D-Day. Designating designs for certain roles ensures that they are used in those subunits. Some roles require certain characteristics. For example, you can't have an AA tank that uses a fixed superstructure. But it is completely possible to make both the German tank destroyers with fixed superstructures and the American ones with turrets and have them go into tank destroyer units. What? The weight class of the chassis determines the weight class of the final design. So a design on the heavy tank that is designed as a tank destroyer is treated as a heavy tank destroyer. This also means we can represent vehicles that changed roles during the war more easily. So you can have your Stuck 3 equivalent with a high soft attack gun to your armored artillery battalions in the early war, but then switch them out later to give them better Okay, since we want to optimize designs for different purposes, we also want to make sure that you can easily decide where a certain tank design ends up. So for example, you can follow the British approach of having fast cruiser tanks to use in armored divisions, and slower infantry tanks that go to support your infantry divisions. To do this, you take a design with a symbol, then quickly select from a list of symbols in the division designer to make the division only pull equipment tagged as such. What? Equipment that isn't tagged will still be used for divisions that don't use... I didn't understand that one. What? It's when you make Space Marines, mixing infantry with tanks, which no one ever does, right? Maybe in single player we can bring that back, mixing infantry with tanks. I think the game is supposed to be played like this, but no one does that. Like in multiplayer, that's banned for years now. We also took another look at what optimization features were necessary for people who don't want to spend a lot of time fine-tuning their tanks. Oh, optimization, that's good for noobs. We do, of course, have the usual auto-design functionality. It takes the design the AI will use and offers its approval. This has gotten some love, and there should now be some national flavor in how the AI designs its tanks. It also takes the overall situation into account. Bullshit. So tanks will be up-armored during the war and so on. Beyond that, we also have added an auto-upgrade function, which keeps a given design current at the research. I like that. To make the tank design more visually distinct, we added about 1,000 new 2D icons. Boy, you did not add 1,000 designs. Bullshit. 1,000 2D icons for tanks, mostly stemming from combining parts of existing tanks in new ways. Like here, example AAA. This guy has turret A, gun A, and hull A. But this one has turret B. It's a bit high brain for me, man. I don't understand. That is maybe one of the biggest death diaries I've ever gotten, man. Look, he has an AA and a turret and radio, and then he has this. This is armor and 2 more turrets. And what am I looking at? Zero speed. Zero speed. So you can fuck up. You know what this shows me, chat? We're gonna break the game. I am hereby predicting competitive multiplayer will break the game. Someone will make a tank like this in Russia and just defend. And it was at this moment that someone realized that we should probably keep negative reliability at 0. Oh, there's negative reliability. So you can really fuck up designs. You have to actually design stuff. A super heavy amphibious tank is an idea too beautiful for this world. It can also only drive backwards for some reason. It drives backwards. So wait, you probably can't really do an amphibious heavy tank, which is very clever. I like that. That is a 10 out of 10 death diary. That is big, man.
She slipped in my fingers like sand. Heard that she had a man. Now I'm just sitting here sad. Ship sail, she slipped in my fingers like sand. Heard that she got a man. Now I'm just sitting here sad. Now I'm just sitting here sad. She slipped in my fingers like sand. Heard that she got a man. Now I'm just sitting here sad. Now I'm just sitting here sad. She slipped in my fingers like sand.